Hey there, here I am, non-ironically, I hope, tying my hair back to keep it out of my face. God. Anyhow, carrying on with the minor, which became a major alteration, I'd switched the cloth because inside out, because when I'd made this thing, see the general rule, actually the ironclad rule that I was always taught was when you're looking, see I'm going to call it the grain. Look at the pattern of the weave. Um, and I was always taught that when you're working on the cloth and the bottom of the kilt is away from you, the grain runs from high left to low right. And that's almost always the case. But I'd noticed many, many times over the years with military kilts that they'd been made the other way, low left, high right. And I couldn't figure out what that was, right? But at the time when I made this 20 something years ago, I was still sort of absolutely ironclad. That's the way I'm going to do it. So the way I'm going to do it. But when the time came to make this kilt, I decided, hang on, this had been the inside of the kilt, but you can see we have better definition. This actually is the good side. So the lesson here is pay attention, and if something that you were told is wrong isn't wrong, stop and think about it for a bit. In any case, yeah, so I pulled this apart, pressed it flat, recalculated the number of pleats, added a pleat, so we have an odd number of pleats, and I've done the inside apron. Now recently, the reason why I'm doing this vid actually is because recently somebody had posted a question about how to form the inside apron. And I think this was on the Facebook page. I'll put a link if you haven't seen that yet. And I thought, good question. I'll show you now. Now the inside apron, he just came by for what we call a forward fitting. I'd done the apron, done the new canvas, done the inside, apron, pleats, canvas, hadn't touched the outside apron. So I brought him by, put the thing on him with one buckle located on his body, located where the right place for the strap was, sewed it on, and discovered that I was actually right on the money, that the width of his front apron is going to be 22 pleats. And as you can see at the time, I just had the cloth running out, and as he was standing there, I just marked it with chalk. Now this will come out with a touch of an iron, but perhaps we're a little, well, actually not a little bit late with this, because before the camera went on, I'd measured that piece of cloth, 22 inches, great, 22 at the waist, 22 at the hip, 23 at the hip, exactly as the plan. So I've sewn the apron to the first pleat, basted the deep pleat to the canvas. Now the question was, fellow wanted to know how to form or shape or create the end of the inside pleat. Well, if you're doing a military kilt, military kilts do not have fringes, or they shouldn't have fringes. Probably they don't. So I'm gonna answer that question by doing the outside apron, because he and I had looked at his kilt and decided that fringe wasn't working for him. So we're changing it to the military style pleat now, or military style edge of the outside apron. Now what you're about to see is exactly what we do every time on the inside apron. So you're just going to have to flip this in your head or something. I'm sure you'll get it. So I've measured, here's my bit of chalk, as I said, at the latitude, shall we say, of the middle of the strap, 22 inches right there. At the bottom of the fell, 23 inches right there. Now, so there's the mark for the bottom of the fell. There's the mark for the center of the strap. Because remember, we have an A line that comes to the center of the strap and then goes straight, unless we're tailoring for female, in which case it continues the taper. It doesn't go parallel here. It continues to taper all the way to the top, because you people are built differently. So there we go. Anyhow, so I've got those two marks. And what I'm going to do is flip it over, get the canvas out of the way, and I'm going to find that mark. The first mark I'm finding, there's my mark for the top of the taper. So, you know, where the strap, well, let's call it the strap line. So pin goes in. There's my width at the bottom of the fell. Pin goes in. And now what I'm going to do, because remember, when I do this with a fringe, remember the canvas winds up being buried inside, but we can't, or at least I don't do it. Other people may want to do it this way. I don't do it that way. So I'm going to show you how. Okay, so we're pinned at the waist and the hip. And now I'm going to bring this extra cloth in, because remember, this usually is the width of a hand, but because we're remaking the kilt and everything's changed a little bit, I'm not going to lose an inch of cloth just for that. So it's going to be a little bit deeper than that. So what I'm going to do is let's pop that pin out for a minute. Let's do that again. So here's the edge of the cloth at the waist, and it's right tight up against the line. It's right tight up there. There's no gap between the two, because frankly, I want as much cloth here as possible. The canvas plus, in this case, 3 layers of tartan, because we need that stability. So here we are, and the cloth has followed. Now this actually just went together a little bit better than the first time I did it. So maybe it's, perhaps I wasn't paying attention as I do it instinctively. I'd possibly shaped it a little bit, because when I pinned it the first time, there was some extra cloth there, and that's, it was kind of bulging out a bit. And of course, the way we deal with that, which we'll see in a minute, is we baste it flat and then press it, which shrinks the extra cloth in place. So the next thing we do, again, there's my waist, there's my hip measurement, is, and I'm cheating on film a little bit, because as I'd measured it, on his body, I had drawn the chalk line, so that in my mind's eye right now, I have the A line. So, and this is just sort of a tiny bit of sort of transposition, because in my mind, it's the other way, but it's the same curve. This is where boat building comes in, I guess, because the curve that I'm seeing right now, this isn't perfect yet, but I put a pin here. This is a great way to find pins in a hurry. I just jam my finger in and I come out and there's pins sticking out of my hands. So there we go. But now that's kind of a straight line, but I don't want a straight line. I want a bit of a gunpowder curve. So I'm kind of ooching it out just to get a curve that pleases my eye. And there's no absolute right or wrong way to do this. It's a matter of just, when you reach that if you manage to achieve that curve, sometimes you can fight with it for a while and it can be a real pain in the backside. But you get that curve and you just realize, okay, that's a pretty line. That's where it should be. There's a certain type of engineer that just drives them nuts when I say, no, you just bend it till the ugly goes away, and then that's where it should be. Okay, so now we can see, I'm going to pin it down a couple more. And you can see we have a bit of gathering cloth there, right? But we're going to deal with that. And the way we're going to deal with that, it's funny because this isn't as dramatic. I mean, we have some sort of dimples there, but it wasn't as dramatic as when I did it just a little while ago in practice. So a bit of basting thread. And the first one I'm going to do, oh yeah, here's a bit of a thing I forgot. Remember that there's that corner, the very corner of the tartan. I'm just going to relieve that just a little bit to decrease the chance of sewing this up and then having a tiny little bit popping out, because, or at least being close enough to the seam that there's a chance that a thread will emerge, because that's not a good look. We want to avoid that. We can see it's trying to stick out a little bit. I don't have to worry about it too much now, because I can deal with it when I'm actually sewing this, which I'm going to show you in a bit. So doing this a bit cheap and cheerful, because the cameraman's standing there, and you got this light little weight. And of course, I shouldn't be mentioning this because it intensifies it. You can just feel the camera getting heavier and heavier and heavier. So I'm going to base this down. I've based that down. And then I'm going to take these pins out, of course. Just for the sake of brevity, I'm now going to baste a second line right there. If it's kind of mountainous in the middle, I might put in some other baste just to knock it down, just to hold it in place where I want it to be. Because again, when I iron this, woolen cloth, when it's wet and it's hot, it's plastic. In the original meaning of the word, you can stretch it and you can shrink it. So let's imagine that I've run in that extra bit of basting. The next thing I would do would be sewing along here, an overhand stitch, and then a blind stitch along here, which we've seen before, where I'm catching back and forth, back and forth. And then the next stage, put that out of the way for a minute. There's my canvas. Now the weight of the inner pleat is dragging it down right now. So that's going to be solved when the top band goes on, because the top band is going to be helping support this. Right now it wants to hang down, but I'm going to bring it up. I'm going to pin it in shape temporarily, because after pinning this in a few spots, I'm then going to baste along here, and I might even baste a couple of times so that the canvas is being held, the canvas and the various layers of wool cloth are held in the right relationship to each other. And again, those bastes come out when the top band goes on. This may seem a bit counterintuitive to some, because you're doing labor that doesn't wind up in the finished kilt, but it pays off in spades, because the easier you make it to do the job, the better job you can do. You shouldn't be fighting the cloth. You shouldn't be fighting your tools. So again, I've basted that preparation for the top band to go on. I'm then going to do that same herringbone stitch that I've done here, and I'm going to get through. There's 3 layers of cloth here. So as I'm doing it, I'm going to be checking and flipping back and forth, frankly, because I want to make sure that this stitching doesn't appear on this side. And then when that's done and it's been pressed, and of course I can't find a strap in a hurry, so whatever, that's when the strap will go on. On the outside apron, we always sew the strap on the inside. The inside apron, the strap goes on the outside. So there we go. I hope that answers the question. Please keep the questions coming. There's no such thing as a dumb answer, and I'll do my best to make sure that, there's no such thing as a dumb question, and I'll make sure that I don't provide any dumb answers. So thank you. Carry on. Stay safe.